Welcome, everybody, to the UFO Disclosure Symposium review. We're getting ready to hype up this event that's coming up the end of May 27th through the 29th. And I'm so thrilled. I'm actually a little bit nervous right now because I'm talking to L.A. Marzulli. He's been doing some tremendous research all over the world with some interesting stuff that could change world history. And he's going to be presenting at the UFO Disclosure Symposium this year. So we're all excited to welcome L.A. Marzulli. How are you doing today, LA?
I'm doing real good, Carl. Thanks for having me on. I'm actually going to go over to my studio. That way, we will eliminate all extraneous noises by Mr. Pooch.
Sounds great.
Mr. Nichols, but yeah.
So you've been traveling all over the world working on your series In Search of the Nephilim, and it's a fascinating body of work. It's absolutely inspired me in tremendous ways. You know, I live here in southern Utah, surrounded by petroglyphs and ancient mysteries, especially up there in the Uinta Basin, where the convention is going to be held. And so it's going to be exciting to see you there and to see what you're bringing to the table. So I'm especially how it all applies. You've been all over the place doing a lot of interesting work, haven't you?
Well, absolutely. What's amazing is, COVID really put the kibosh on a lot of what we were doing. And unfortunately, it's still happening. For instance, we can't really get into Europe without proof of vaccination. We can't get there. So hopefully things will loosen up. There are places which I am just itching to go to. But, I've been to Mexico, all over the United States, Peru, Bolivia, pretty much all over Europe. But we've just scratched the surface. I mean, a person could spend the rest of their lives looking at artifacts, trying to put the pieces together. And we believe we found several smoking guns. One is our research with the elongated skulls, thanks to Brian Forrester down in Peru. Brian was our guide, and he was the one that really opened it up to the globe. Brian did a great job. But my team, the team that I put together, Mondo Gonzalez was our lead archaeologist, Rick Woodward was our lead anthropologist. We had different labs. And what we discovered was that the mitochondrial DNA from the female side comes from several places. It can come from the Middle East. It can come from the Black Sea region, the Levant, Eastern Europe. I mean, that rewrites history. But the academics refuse to look at it because it rewrites history. They don't like that. The bottom line is, and I say this every day on my own show, there is a hidden history that has been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. There's no doubt about that. And there's really a couple of paradigms one can have. One, something supernatural is going on here, where this knowledge is being literally dispensed to mankind. The other one is we're being visited by extraterrestrials. So we'll define those terms. Extraterrestrial is anything that originates off-world, off this world. So if you're an angel, a messenger, if you're an interdimensional being, you are, in fact, an extraterrestrial by just the definition. A case in point would be, if you look at, let's say, pretty much everybody knows Jesus, so we'll use him. Now, he's supposedly God and man. He's a hybrid entity. And I know I get in trouble when I say that because people freak out, but he is. He's apparently, if you believe that, and of course that's my paradigm, but he's fully God and fully man. Well, how does that work? We know that from, if the gospel records are true, and your listeners have to decide whether that it's all mythos or it's true or not, that the Spirit of a living God impregnated a Virgin Mary. And so somehow DNA was exchanged. There's no doubt about that. So it was off-world. There's no doubt about that either. So it gets complex. So if we are visited by extraterrestrials, then, and this is what Ancient Aliens, of course, promulgates every week. And I was on the first two seasons, which led to our Watchers series because we got tired of being edited and, these are not the droids you're looking for type of thing. And so, right. Yeah, we were just heavily edited. And I just said, well, we need to do our own series. But I believe that there's a supernatural dynamic to all this. The late J. Allen Hynek, I really can't wait to meet Paul at the conference because I quote his father all the time, that he believed that J. Allen Hynek believed that the phenomena was closer to something demonological. And Jacques Vallée also who's still alive today, obviously. Vallée also, at least when he wrote the book Messengers of Deception, held that view. And in my presentation, I'll be opening up the can of worms, and I'll basically start. How many people think it's okay to abduct a 5-year-old boy and implant him? Anybody in the room think that's a good thing? Raise your hand. Well, this goes on. So I'll be exploring the fact that, look, we have cattle mutilations, we have human mutilations, we have implants, we have some sort of a race of hybrid entities which are being created. There's no doubt about that. We've had people come on the record who have had encounters with hybrid beings. Their eyes shapeshifted right in front of them. They did things that normal human beings can't do. So something is going on. It's just a question of what paradigm will we embrace? What is the truth? I say that on my show. All I'm looking for is the truth. And I go wherever the science of the truth takes me.
And you've been digging clear into the ancient past, looking for the evidence, and you've found a significant amount.
Well, I would say yes. It was our team, and this is the work of Rick Woodward, the anthropologist. We sent him all these one-to-one casts of the Paracas skull that were done by Joe Chandler. And Joe is the curator of the Mount Blanco Museum in Texas. He's a master molder. And so the skull that I have here, the two that I have here in my studio, it looks exactly like what we handled in Peru, except that they're one-to-one casts made out of epoxy. So we sent all the skulls to Rick, and we sent pictures of other skulls in the museum. And Rick said, here's the deal, guys, the foramen magnum, which is a hole at the base of a skull where the spinal column attaches. And this is the work of Rick. Nobody else on the planet came up with this. Nobody else. He's the first guy. He gets all the credit. And of course, people don't give him the credit, but I do, because Rick's a great guy. So super genius, as he refers to himself. And the bottom line is, when you turn the skull over, the foramen magnum is placed all the way to the posterior of the skull. You cannot cradle headboard the child and move the foramen magnum. That happens in vitro, in the womb, and it's all the way to the occipital plate. It should be basically, you can move it up a solid inch, at least an inch. It should be in the center of the skull, just like ours. It's not. This is why when I see a cradle headboarded skull, I can tell pretty quickly. All I have to do is turn the skull over. If the foramen magnum's in the center, well, that child, unfortunately, was cranial deformation, cradle headboarded. But the ones that we've studied, the foramen magnum's pushed all the way in the back. So we're looking at genetic anomalies in the skulls. And of course, Brian had a couple of guys that came down. I guess they're affiliated with Gaia. I've been trying to get a hold of them, and they're not answering my emails. Shame on them. And I've even offered them $500 for like an interview. And apparently they were able to coax out nuclear DNA. And what's fascinating about this, there's nothing in the Jailbank which correlates to what they found. It's not there, which supports my hypothesis that these are, in fact, Nephilim. We're looking at the remnants of the Nephilim. Let me give you one more smoking gun. The Book of Enoch, okay? So the Book of Enoch is a pseudepigraphical book attributed to this character by the name of Enoch, who lived thousands of years ago. Now, with all due respect, and I've seen Eric von Daniken, talk about Enoch, but I'd love to sit down with him and defend your position, because he's taking things and he's twisting them. This fallen angelic entity was not an alien from some other universe. It wasn't. Well, that's not true. If it's an interdimensional being, it might be from some other multiverse. We don't know. Right. We really don't understand. But this entity by the name of Sauriel gave mankind knowledge of the lunar precession, basically the 18.5-year Metonic cycle. So when you go to all these sites, Carl, and here's the rub. When you go to all these sites, many of them, most of them, are built on an 18.5-year Metonic cycle. Well, let's just drill into Chaco Canyon or America's Stonehenge.
The center place. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Native Americans didn't know anything about the 18.5-year lunar cycle, but it's there. So archaeologists prop up a straw man argument, which is, Well, they must have known about it, Ole, because it's there. No, not so fast, citizen. That's totally bogus. You don't know the source of it. And the fact when you go and you ask a Native American, did you know anything about the 18.5-year lunar cycle? They'll say no. It's not in their oral tradition. It's not. What's in their oral tradition are the giants, the six-fingered, red-haired, cannibalistic, sexually sadistic giants. And I just spoke to a guy, get this. I just spoke to a guy whose grandfather was part of a formal government dig in an undisclosed location because they were going to flood and make this huge lake, right? So there were all these mounds. There were like 8 mounds, and the largest mound never got excavated. They pulled out a 10-footer, and I'm not exaggerating. The woman who was still alive, she was 6 years old, a little girl. Her father took her to see it. Yeah. All right. So we had multiple witnesses. Unfortunately, she passed away several years ago, but they were 8, 9, and 10 footers in these mounds. Well, that jives with what the First Nation people say. Now, this is where it becomes complex, and I get nasty letters from tribal chiefs. Not really. But if there's something here before them, then they're not First Nation. That's okay. They're first human being nation. I get that. Because what's here before them are, in my opinion, the Nephilim. When you go to America, Stonehenge, same thing going on there. Same exact thing. It's like 18.5-year Metonic cycle, huge stones. They know the solstice. And Kelsey Stone, in my opinion, and look, we could talk all night here. I only got 10 minutes. But Kelsey Stone came up with something which I believe is the most profound archaeological discovery of the 21st century. Because when you go out to the summer solstice standing stone at America Stonehenge in New Hampshire, Salem, New Hampshire, right? And you go on Google Earth and you draw a line, you wind up bisecting the 2 trilithons at Stonehenge, England. That's an impossibility. That ain't a coinkydink. And once they discovered that, Carl, that was it. They went to all the other standing stones. Guess what? Those lines go to Machu Picchu, Teotihuacan, what's the other one? Chaco Canyon, the Canary Islands, Stonehenge, England, and the Great Pyramid in Giza. That's why we call our film, the Axis Mundi. Now, I won't be talking about that at your conference, but it all connects. We are looking, in my opinion, I say this often, at the fingerprints of the supernatural. And if we're intellectually honest, and I start my presentation at your conference by saying this, if we are intellectually honest, we don't know what this is or where we are in it. If the universe is, if the United States is analogous to the universe, is planet Earth in Duluth, Dallas, Los Angeles, New York? We have no flipping idea where we are, what this is, how it got here, and what we're doing in it. We don't. We don't even know how we work. We don't even know how consciousness interacts with our 3-dimensional biological bodysuit, which we call, which we're in right now, talking and communicating. And I'm watching you. Your eyes are blinking, your head nodding, you're breathing, and your heart's beating. And you're digesting that wonderful lunch that you had several hours ago. But you're not thinking about any of that because you're free. Because your little biological bodysuit that you're in works. And it works really good for most of the time by itself. It's absolutely astounding. But we don't know what we are, what consciousness is, how we got here. And there are many different paradigms. I was diehard New Age until I was 30. I had spirit guides. My third eye was open. I had a guru. I lived in the ashram. Carlos Castaneda, Vision Quest. I was all over it, all over. And then when I hit 30, I had a Paul on the road to Damascus profound encounter, which that's 41 years ago. So I'm 71 years old and I'm still banging the same drum I've been banging forever. We are looking, I think, at what I call the coming great deception. Because when these entities come, they will tell us that they created all life on this planet, that they jump-started the DNA in early man, that they somehow, we took a chimp or an ape or whatever, Denisovan, whatever we did, whatever they did, and they created modern humans as we know them, Homo sapiens. That they jump-started the world's civilizations, religions. Now at this critical juncture, they are back to usher mankind into a golden age. So we're looking at we haven't heard this since the stinking Cold War, the actual use of nukes. A couple of days ago, one of the Russian guys on Putin's team said, if we are threatened, if Russia is threatened existentially, we will use the nuclear option. So, we are in a really weird time. The late David Flynn used to talk about the idea that there would be some kind of a nuclear exchange and then they would show up. Something is holding them back. There are ancient prophetic texts which warn of this type of a deception that comes upon the planet. So, look, I only have 10 minutes. I could go on and on and on. You know that. So you may have another question. I'll shut up.
No, I think it's great. LA, you're touching on all of it. I'm so excited to see your presentation and especially see you in the room with all these other like-minded individuals and bring your theories and evidence and opinions and everything to the table. I know that you're not alone on this. I talked to many people that have this same kind of mindset at scratching at the surface of this. And it feels like it's all coming to a point where there needs to be people like you and I and everybody coming to this convention, getting ready to try and press the ball further down the field towards the truth and our real history and the true nature of reality, which, like you said, is still totally a mystery to us. And at this symposium, we've got 4 new pieces of undisclosed UFO footage that are going to be revealed. What can you say about that you would say is how that is maybe connected and what you're most interested in about seeing that new footage that's going to come out?
Well, whoever these entities are, and I think I have a pretty good idea who they are, at least in my paradigm, others can disagree, they do manipulate space, time, matter, and energy in ways that defy our physics. So they have the capability of doing that. I interviewed an abductee for our ongoing UFO series, by the way, shameless plug. The first film, UFO Disclosure, the 7-year cover-up exposed, the coming great deception, that's available on my YouTube channel for free. You can watch the film. It's an hour long. It's broadcast quality. Watch it and we released it for free because people need to see it. The second one should be out by the end of April. 3, 4, and 5. I've got most of the footage, and we'll be rolling those out hopefully by the year's end. The best UFO footage I've ever seen was taken by the late Dr. Roger Lear, the Kumburgaz UFO. It was in our Watchers series. We broke the story. We had the film. Of course, people have copied it. It's all over the internet. But that is the best UFO footage I've ever seen. So if we're just going to see more Tic Tac stuff that's distant, I don't know whether you've seen it or not, who cares? It's like, I've seen all that. Show me something like Kumburgaz, and then I'll give it the 2 thumbs up. Kumburgaz, and I'll show the Kumburgaz UFO footage at the conference, because Dr. Lear gave it to us, gave it to the Watchers. We were the guys that broke it. We were the guys that carried it, to the fore. And again, other people have taken it and they do what they do. Welcome to piracy. But right. Be that as it may, look, they manipulate space, time, matter, and energy. And I will equate this to an ancient prophetic text that we know was written about 2,000 years ago. And I will ask the question rhetorically to the audience, what does this sound like to you? A man is in a room, he's chained to a wall, he's in a jail, and all of a sudden this entity appears in the jail cell somehow, walks through the wall, right? And without touching any of the chains come off this man in the jail cell. Without touching the door opens by itself. The cellmates are all asleep. They've been switched off. They walk out into the hallway. The guards are all asleep. They've been switched off. They come to the prison door, opens by itself. They go to the gate, opens by itself. The man walks with this entity a few feet, and the entity just disappears. Now, you and I would say, golly, that sounds a lot like an abduction, doesn't it?
Right.
It's just, right? Well, it's not. It's not. It's called Peter's Jailbreak, and it's written in the book of Acts 2,000 years ago. So the point I'm making is we've got real biblical texts which point to the good guys can manipulate space, time, and matter and energy, and the bad guys can manipulate space, time, matter, and energy. So the bad guys, you go through the window. And the abductee I talked to over the weekend, lifelong abductee, she got it stopped. I might show some clips of that riveting testimony, emotional, gut-wrenching. She had 3 children taken from her in the first trimester of pregnancy. I wrote about that years ago in the Nephilim trilogy. Very disturbing. And I'll ask the audience, hey, is that a good thing? Is that a good thing? Yeah. Your wife gets impregnated and you don't know who, you think it's you, but it's not. And then in the first trimester, she said 12 weeks, they come and they take the baby. And then when you go to your OBGYN, there's no trace of a fetus here. You were never pregnant. Oh, yes, I was.
Yeah.
I know I was, and you told me I was pregnant. So look, something's going on. Dr. David Jacobs talks about the so-called breeding program. He thinks it's nefarious. I think it's nefarious. And this ties back into, once again, a ancient prophetic text which tells us it'll be like the days of Noah when the Son of Man returns. What differentiates the days of Noah? The Nephilim. These entities are cohabiting, having sex with the women, creating a hybrid entity known as the Nephilim. So, look, I've been on the trail for years, decades, and everything. I've never been blasted out of the water. What I mean by that is all the evidence I keep uncovering just dovetails together. And it's not because I'm fudging it. It's because it just does. The 18.5-year metonic cycle, the nuclear DNA from the Paracas skulls, the maternal DNA, the mitochondrial DNA, showing a Middle Eastern haplogroup, the 80-ton stones put together without mortar, ashlar construction in Sacsayhuaman, the 18.5-year metonic cycle, the fact that the stones at America Stonehenge point to other sites before the sites were built, because America Stonehenge is 4,000 years old and Chaco Canyon is what, 2,000 at the most? Whatever. How is that possible? And the only way to do that is you triangulate in the air. Who is the prince of the power of the air? It's another name for the dragon.
Yeah. I can't wait, LA. I can't wait for your presentation. I can't wait for the symposium to come up May 27th through the 29th. And if you want to check out LA Marzulli's presentation and more, and see the unreleased pieces of footage to make up your own conclusions, make sure and get your tickets at the UFO Disclosure Symposium.com right now. Thanks so much for joining me today, LA. I appreciate it so much.
Thanks, Carl. My pleasure.